Hey everyone, welcome to the show for another Rich Seriez live episode. I have an amazing guest today. His name is Arturo Rubio. He was working in the hospitality restaurant business, and then he was a waiter, and then now he is a Key BDR, a senior player in the game. I'm going to ask him questions about how he started transition to there, and also how he climbed the ranks to become a senior level BDR. Everyone, show some love to my guest, Arturo Rubio. Let's go. What's going on, man?
Yo, what's going on, Rich?
Hey, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing good. Can't complain. First time doing something like this. Super excited and super excited to, provide some insight for people looking to break into tech sales.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it, man. Especially you taking, your time of day here. How was the weekend? Do anything exciting here?
Um, uh, Weekend was pretty chill. Played some soccer. Hung out with some friends and family. So much needed chill weekend.
Awesome. Well, I'm happy you had a chill weekend because today is the day of the live show, right? This is how we're gonna do it here. But I do want to say thank you for being on the episode itself here, especially you with having a background in the restaurant business. A lot of the people that I've been able to coach, they come from that background. So tell us a little bit about yourself and what you were doing here. What were you doing before this?
Sure. Yeah. So a little bit about myself first. I'm 27. I was born and raised here in Santa Barbara, California, where I currently reside. I grew up in a family of six. Was fortunate enough to be raised by amazing Mexican immigrant parents who kind of showed me and my brothers firsthand the
Nice.
importance of hard work and consistency. But outside of work, I love to work out. I love to travel, love to play soccer, love to try new restaurants, and just spend quality time with friends and family. But so before I got into tech sales, like the title says, I was in the restaurant and hospitality industry at a resort here in town, where I started as a dishwasher at the age of 16.
Wow,
So it was my first job, actually.
it's crazy.
So yeah, I started as dishwasher there at one of their three restaurants on property. And over the next, I would say 6 to 8 years, I kind of rose the ranks to become a fine dining server at their flagship restaurant, while simultaneously going to school to get my undergrad in business at some nearby colleges here in Santa Barbara. Um, uh, but
It's
really,
crazy. What a resume already.
yeah, it kept me busy. Definitely kept me busy. But essentially, in my latest role, it consisted of working with top culinary and top restaurant leaders and top mixologists to provide this luxurious like dining experience for some pretty high value clientele. So it definitely consisted of not only having kind of extensive beverage and gastronomy knowledge, but also being able to be the quarterback and work with different departments and to execute this fluid and memorable experience while also trying to
Right.
sell as much as possible, of course, along the way, and while also trying to build a genuine connection, with your guest at the same time. So yeah, that's what kept me busy for I would say the last 6 to 8 years.
Wow. So with that many years in, the restaurant business is also going to school, like how did you find out about tech sales and what made you, choose that career and switch?
Yeah. So I first learned about tech sales through my housemate, actually. So we were living together and he was
Huh.
fully remote. So just naturally his work would get brought up. So it's funny, actually. In fact, I remember vividly still, since he would start his days a little bit earlier than I would get like woken up to him cheering and like shouting in joy because he would be getting, an opportunity or having a good conversation, like, or booking an opportunity or having booking a meeting,
Yeah.
essentially. So, just naturally after that, I was like, hey, like, what do you do exactly? That makes you shout like that,
Yeah,
obviously.
yeah.
Um, but it was through him actually that, the coin the I heard about tech sales first. So, and it was through
Uh,
him actually the first person to tell me like, hey, like, maybe you could be good at this, like maybe you should look more into it. And that kind of planted the seed in my head. And as the months went by, I've naturally found myself kind of looking more into the role. um
yeah.
uh, you know and I eventually made the decision to switch after learning that my previous role as a waiter was a good stepping stone into tech sales. So essentially, I noticed a lot of similarities between the two roles.
Okay.
So I figured, if I was good in my previous role, then maybe it's worth a shot to try get into tech sales. And it was around that time too that I was had completed my undergrad in business. So I was definitely ready for change. I was definitely ready to feel uncomfortable again. So I definitely wanted to get comfortable with feeling uncomfortable again. So, it was just the timing of everything as well too. So yeah.
I just want to touch base. So what Arturo said about being uncomfortable again, he preaches that all the time, which is awesome, by the way. It's such a great trait to have, is you don't ever want to be content with where you're at in life or just in general where you are in career or development. And this is the reason why he's so good, is because he's able to at least put himself in that position, like, okay, I got to get this down, and I get to working on how to develop my skills, and bam, look at, he's able to do that now. So and you're right about the whole restaurant business. You are helping and catering to the customers itself. So how were you, and I know there's a lot of transfer skills you could do that, but how were you able to articulate the skills you develop as a waiter into a BDR role? How did that work out itself?
Yeah, so I definitely had the same kind of predicament as well too that I thought about. Like, how am I going to be able to articulate this to recruiters or to companies I was searching? So kind of I broke it down to step by step. So the first step was identifying the top similarities that the two roles had, and I explained how I developed those skills in my previous role and how essentially I was ready to continue learning and continue to be coachable in the new role. So, for example, in my previous role, I was very comfortable talking to new people every day and trying to build connections with them. So that translates into sales, with cold outreach, warm
Right.
outreach, perhaps, because you're going to be having to reach out and meet new people every single day in sales,
Right.
whether that's
Exactly.
through the phone call, whether that's through LinkedIn, or that's through email. The people most likely, especially as a BDR, it's the first time that you two are meeting. So that's something that I was already comfortable with doing at my previous job, serving, new people every single day. For another example, maybe, I kind of already had the more sales, more money mindset
Yeah.
that came
Right.
from the restaurant
Like
industry, right?
anyone, right? Yeah.
Right. So, as like a waiter, the more you sell, the more, the table spends, and, and everything else
Yeah.
goes right. Your more gratuity you should be getting, right? So the more money, the more sales, the more money in your pocket. So that definitely translates into sales as well, too, right? The more meetings you book, the more opportunities you create, or the sales you close, the more money, generally speaking, in your pocket. Another example that I kind of noticed between the two roles, just like in hospitality and restaurants, every day comes with kind of its new challenges, and being able to adapt quickly and effectively is definitely very important.
Yeah.
And that was something that,
100%.
we did day in and day out in the restaurant and hospitality industry. You never knew, who was going to come through that door, or what type of challenges would face the day, whether it's, we're out of a specific wine or specific food, or, maybe we're short staffed or something like that. There's new
100%.
challenges every time. So that definitely translates into tech sales as well too, with macroeconomics being a factor. You never know what's going to affect your industry, what's going to affect your prospects, or what's going to, maybe some internal factors that are difficult to manage. So you definitely have to identify that and adapt rather quickly. So I would say those three things I was able to identify and articulate that during the interview process. That definitely made a big difference, I think, overall.
Yeah, so like just kind of hearing everything you just said, to just kind of summarize, it sounds like the two things that summarize everything there is adaptability, right? Just being able to adapt to every scenario, and also being proactive on getting things done. And I 100% agree with that. That's what you have to do. Yeah, once you're in this sales role, like both of us are, there are days where we're like, "What's gonna happen?" Are we gonna talk to someone? Are we gonna get yelled at? There's so many
Yeah.
days like that, and yeah, 100%. And I'm so glad you mentioned that. And the restaurant industry is such a hard industry to work in and too. Especially if you're in like a really a famous or big, well-known company, a restaurant. Oh my gosh, I can only imagine the drama that could happen on the spot right there. So, yeah, good. That's really smart that you were able to articulate it. So like, all right, so the responsibilities of like a waiter. So how did you learn about what the tasks were and the responsibility of a BDR, especially since you and I we come from different routes. I took the boot camp, the tech sales boot camp, course careers. By the way, if you want to sign up, link in the description, sign over there. So that's how I knew about the role, right? Because I came from finance, and I did sales too. We understood that, but how were you able to figure out what everyday tasks and responsibility, during as a BDR?
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. I think once I made up my mind or was kind of looking into it a little bit more, of course, what comes after that is researching the role itself, being naturally curious about what the actual day-to-day looks like, right?
Hmm.
So I think I took several different approaches. The first one being, of course, my housemate. Since he was the one to introduce him with the role, he wasn't shy to kind of take me through his day to day, how many calls he made that day, how many connections he had that day, or how many
Right.
emails he sent out that day, or, or what new companies he was excited about reaching out to in the near future. And like what made them a good account to reach out to, like what, they have good value, if their value propositions fit their needs, things like that. Of course, another avenue is definitely through YouTube. Like everything's on YouTube nowadays.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
100%.
From like I think the other day I was like my washer machine was just like was freaking out several months ago, and of course YouTube had a video, and sure enough I was able to fix
Exactly.
it. So it's same thing goes with sales and looking into different industries. So there's definitely a lot of content creators out there that come from sales background, specifically tech sales. So
Yeah.
definitely looked at some of their content and their tips and kind of their a day in the life videos, I guess you could say, that are pretty popular nowadays.
Right.
Yeah, got a lot of good information from there. And, was starting to think of like, of course, do I see myself in that role? You know what I mean? Do I see myself
Hmm.
overcoming those challenges that they're talking about? Can I see myself, pushing through essentially? So YouTube was another avenue. Another way too, it was kind of unexpected. It happened during my job hunt.
Hmm.
So I was actually a third party sales mentorship company reached out to me, and I was recruited by them.
Okay.
I interviewed them. I interviewed for them a little bit ago, and the whole thing is that they have these companies that they're connected with that instantly kind of give you, I would say, a 3 month internship position, for lack of a better word, as an SDR within their company. So they would connect you with those tech companies, and in return, they would essentially train you in between. So they had virtual boot camps. So I would sign up for their virtual boot camps, and there they would kind of teach the fundamentals of cold and warm outreach,
Right. Right.
and just teach you some more terms and tech industry terms as a whole. So That was another way. So definitely, boot camps, virtual boot camps are definitely a big game changer.
Yeah, so I know exactly what you're talking about because when I was doing the job search myself, there's I saw that they had that option. I forgot what the company's name is called. It's probably the same one that
It
you and
might be,
I.
yeah.
Yeah, it could be definitely the same one. I just forgot what it's called, but it's essentially what I after research it, especially if you have the free time, and the luxury to do that. They essentially will help you. Yeah, when you get paid, it is a lower, amount compared to like a standard full time SER role, and I believe that's how they get their payment as well. But it is still a great way to break in because you build connections, you learn the role and everything
Mhm.
like that. So that makes sense. See, I so you went through a boot camp kind of in a way, but as in, shout out to your housemate, whoever your housemate is, shout out to him, by the
Shout
way,
out. Shout out,
because
Brad.
you've been you've been referring him a few times, and it sounds like he knows exactly what he's doing. And look at you now, like you're you were able to climb up the ranks, and you're a senior BDR. So, I mean, kudos to you on that. So, once you landed the job as a BDR, how long did it take for you to be fully independent? I know you have like the rent phase and everything, but tell me how long that process took, by the way.
I would say it varies from company to company, but for me, it took about 3 to 4 solid months of
Hmm.
ramping up. You know, shout out to Ari, who you had on your show a few weeks ago, or she was your first
Yes.
guest actually.
Hmm.
She actually built out our onboarding program for BDRs, or just sales professionals in general. And it took about 3 to 4 months. What I loved about it is she kind of broke it down into three different main topics that we would cover week after week. So maybe one week we'd dive into the industry, right? So where our company falls into the tech industry, for instance, fintech, healthcare tech, things like that. We talk about maybe our competitors, what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses, what are our strengths and weaknesses, how long have we been in the game compared to them, funding, such as things like that, right, that are relevant to our
Right.
industry. Another week maybe we'll talk about our specific product. So we'll dive deep into our product and what makes it stand out from other products and how it helps certain ideal customer profiles and how it helps other companies and kind of talk technical essentially about our
Right.
product. And maybe another week we'll talk about our sales methodology, right? So there's different sales methodologies out there, and I think every company, every sales department in every company maybe has their favorites. So we learned about ours maybe one week, and learn about the what makes our sales methodology maybe a little bit different, maybe a little bit better, the pros and cons, things like that, to how that eventually help you once you're onboarded when you start reaching out to prospects. So it definitely made everything super super digestible. Painted a clear picture. But definitely over this was all over a good 3 to 4 months of
That's great.
up until I could was comfortable kind of just being on my own and stuff, and just taking the reign from there.
All right. So, we're going to go back then since you're talking about fully independent. So, after, you were fully independent, I know that took about 3 or 4 months, but let's go step it back a little bit. So, you came from the restaurant business, you know, take us back to your first day, like what you were feeling, going from a waiter to working at tech sales, completely different industries and position. Take us back.
Yeah, so yeah, definitely. I remember the first day, definitely a mixture of excitement and anxiousness. Like as you said, all I knew up until that point was, restaurant hospitality
Yeah.
terms and industry knowledge. So, and aside from whatever I learned about tech sales and tech in general through these boot camps and online, but never like any actual hands-on experience. So I just didn't know what to explain in simple. I just didn't know what to expect like that first day, like what I would be doing like hour by hour, right?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I think like the best way I could describe it now that I think about it is like when you're about to sit, like when you're at an amusement park and you sit down for the first time on the roller coaster, like the seat belts come down. You had been
Yes,
waiting
the
in
feeling.
line
Oh
maybe
my
for like 3 to
gosh.
4 hours, right? It's a
Uh-huh.
long wait, and
Yeah.
and they're clicking you in and stuff, and that's probably what I felt the first day, right? Like I knew that there was going to be ups and downs. I knew that there was going to be some slow turns, some fast turns, but I think at the end of the I knew at the back of my head that like once that roller coaster ride finishes, like I'm not gonna regret that I took that ride, you know? So I think that's the best way I could describe like how I felt that first day.
What 100%. I could definitely relate to that. Getting into it. It just like you're here, you made it, right? You're in the space. Now let's go for it. This
Yeah.
enjoy the ride right there. So what were some challenges you faced early in your sales career, anyways? Because there's a lot of challenges, like a lot. So what was something for you?
Yeah, so definitely probably like the meatiest question I would say of the of this whole kind of interview. I could easily spend like, the whole hour on this question
Right.
alone. Um, I would say three main things kind of come to mind. Um, I think the first one, of course, is rejection handling.
Yes.
It's because as somebody in tech sales, whether you're a BDR or AE, every single day you are gonna get rejected through like one form or another, whether it's through the phone, whether it's through LinkedIn messages, whether it's through emails. Every day you're probably going to receive like a not interested, or this isn't relevant to me, or appreciate it if maybe don't reach out again, something like that, or like we're covered, we
Right.
got this covered already, or like we're good, right? So is that constant rejection that you have to not take personally, I would say. So I think something early on that I would catch myself doing is kind of taking it personally and kind of, feel that like have a feeling like, oh, I think it was a me thing, like they
Oh,
were
I could
rejecting
so
me or
relate
something
on
like
that.
that. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? And so
Mhm.
that's something, however, through the months and consistency that I think you have to overcome, and something that that I've definitely improved on a tremendous amount. For instance, like if I get a rejection, I'll shrug it off now within a couple seconds. I'll learn from
Right.
it. That's I think that's another key distinction to make, is not just forget about your rejections, like yeah, like forget
Yeah.
about like the maybe emotional baggage that comes with it, but like don't forget, to learn from it as well too. Another thing maybe that I was struggling with early on, um, I would think it'd be this thing like it'd be like imposter syndrome is what I think
Okay.
they coin it, right? So especially if you're just coming into tech as a BDR, from a different industry, maybe that does not have to do anything with tech, such as my case, like the restaurant industry. I think you'd get this sense of imposter syndrome where like, hey,
Mm,
like
I see.
the CEO that I'm going to talk to right now, or maybe the CTO or COO, these high, um, they're these high profile kind of people that you're going to reach out to. Like, maybe some thoughts might creep in, like, who am I for them to listen to me or something, or does this my message really will resonate with them, you know?
Yeah.
And it's something you have to get over. Definitely, it's something that can't stop you from having a conversation or with your prospect,
Yeah.
which I think just improves over time. Definitely, I've gotten a lot better at it with having great conversations with those types of people. So one thing that I do to kind of combat is still, because I'm not perfect. So whenever those thoughts creep in, I think to myself, you know what, I've talked to hundreds of like CFOs before. I've had great conversations with them
Exactly.
that resulted in mutual benefits for me and them. Um, you know, it shouldn't stop me from reaching out to this next CFO. Um,
Right.
you know, I think another one too, just to that I just thought of too, is I had this like problem of kind of selling the product rather than selling the meeting. And as
Oh yeah,
SDRs, as
I know.
our main objective is to sell the meeting, right? To get a meeting, to discuss further a partnership, rather than the product, right? So I remember early on, you know, as soon as I would get some type of positive feedback from a prospect that they may be interested, or maybe this may actually, this could benefit them, I remember going into product selling mode, where I would want to talk about our features and how we can help and things like that. But it should be the opposite approach. It should be just learning about their business model, and so that you could sell the meeting further on to actually talk deeper about your product, because you're not going to sell a B2B tech product, within the first cold call. It's just not
Yeah, it's not gonna
happen,
happen.
right?
Yeah, yeah,
It's going to take various
no.
different decision makers, and it's going to take months, maybe even more than months, several quarters to talk technical. So you know, um, in that first kind of outreach, it's definitely worth remembering that you're selling the meeting, not the product.
I could definitely relate on that. I had the especially when like I first started, that was my issue was to I I was essentially doing like what account executives did, kind of like I get excited, exactly how you described it, and then I'll start selling our product. But 100%. So if you guys viewers don't know, it takes 8 touch points average. There's a real a study, and it could take 8 touch points for you to finally complete a sell. So kind of like backpedal what Arturo said. Yeah, it could take, depending on how many conversations you have with that person or that lead or whatnot, it could take months, maybe even a year, right? So every sales cycle is completely different. But yeah, it's I had that issue, or the imposter syndrome. Oh man, yeah. And then like one way to handle is just be like, hey, I got the job role. I'm not an imposter. I am in this position. So I am right for this role. Out of everyone, they selected me for this job position. So I actually deserve this, and I'm gonna handle this job role, whatever it is. And then yeah, rejection. So by the way, if you guys are wanting to get into sales, you will build like huge character strengths of rejection handling. It's gonna suck. I highly recommend if you can walk around. I like to do push-ups when I start like everyone's different, but I will start doing push-ups, especially when I'm getting rejections and I have a call. I'm doing calls of rejection after rejection. I'll start doing push-ups. Like I'll do 30 push-ups and then I'll get back to calling. Sometimes you got to do that, right? So, but how long did it take for you to finally overcome those challenges? I know I asked you like when you were fully independent and took you 3 to 4 months, but how about your challenges? Because challenges could take a while. How long did it take for you to do that?
Yeah. Well, first off, I think I want to try that push-up technique, honestly. Now that I think about it, like that's a great technique right there.
Yeah,
Just get the jitters out, yeah.
yeah,
I would say, I would say, like, to get to the point where I'm at right now, where like, for instance, like rejection handling, if I get a bad phone call, like, I'd forget about it within the next like minute or so, and then just keep moving on. I think it took me a good 6 months to kind of get to that stage.
yep,
After constantly getting it, day in and day out, and but I think it varies for various people. I think some people, um, maybe take less time for them, or maybe it'll take more time for them. But I think what I can guarantee is that over time, and the more that you put yourself in that position, it's gonna get better. Like, you're not gonna feel it as much. That I can guarantee for sure.
right.
So solid, yeah, solid 6 months, I would say.
No, I have to agree with you on that one too. So it's kind of like you learn how to handle that rejection. So it's like life, you're always going to have all these challenges. So your car could break down. For example, my car messed up last week. in the middle of the week. So it is what it is, right? It just happened. And let's say you missed the interview, you spilled coffee in the morning. Yes, you're gonna have those day-to-day challenges, but the best people are the ones that, you know what, this happened, I'm gonna keep moving forward. How do you handle those challenges? So, with that being said, you handle those challenges. So, you must have gained some strength. So, what along the way, what were some natural strengths you discovered about yourself, and how did you uncover them, anyways?
Yeah, so yeah, thankfully I had some natural strengths to kind of even the odds, I would say. One that I recognized kind of early on was my ability to kind of control my controllables. So that kind of goes into your consistency of activity, right? So, there's so many uncontrollables out there in life, especially in sales. But the one
Yes,
thing you can't control in this profession is the activity that you do in the day, right? So in the working hours, right? And by activity, I mean
right.
sales activities, right? So the amount of outreach touches that you did maybe on LinkedIn, the amount of emails you sent out, or the amount of time you spent researching a new company, and so that uncovering maybe some potential pain, some way that your company can help them, or maybe the amount of phone calls that you did that day, right? So these are all um, controllables. So something that I really made an effort in was being consistent with those controllables, right? So I think that would be definitely a natural strength. I think for depending on the type of person that you are, maybe you're better at some things, maybe you're better at other things. Um, I think another thing that I noticed that played well into this role was the ability to learn from my mistakes, right? So, looking back at all the
Hmm.
no's and the rejection, right? But seeing what I could get out of them, right? Like diving deeper into those calls, into those emails, or to those value drivers. Like why did this prospect say no, or like why weren't we a good fit for them? Essentially, so I could point out maybe my message needs some tweaking. Maybe I missed something about this account that I thought made them a good prospecting account, so being able to go back and learn from your mistakes and apply those things that you learned into your future outreach, right? So being able to just improve, really just improve, and kind of fine tune your messaging and fine tune your outreach is definitely something very important in this that I noticed, that maybe that was a strength of mine.
Right.
I would say lastly, the ability to change strategies. I think kind of ties back to what I was saying earlier about what was
That's
what
a good
was
one.
um, what was a big factor in hospitality and restaurant industry. You never know what's going to change that day. The same applies for tech, right? So there might
Hmm.
be some new law or something, or maybe the Fed passed some new thing about the economy that's going to impact the industry
Right.
you're trying to sell in, right? Or maybe um, your the account you're prospecting into maybe got some new funding, things like that, or maybe the lack of funding, things like that, right? So you have
Yeah.
to kind of change. You gotta identify those, and you gotta change your strategies. Because one thing that is another for sure certain thing that I've learned in sales is that what worked 1 month to get maybe connections or to maybe get meetings, it probably won't work the next month, because sales is
Yes.
just so ever changing.
Yes.
New techniques become, maybe your techniques become stale, they become saturated, and your prospects see, are not interested, or they don't understand your messaging. So being able to definitely change strategies, to keep up with your generation of pipeline is definitely another strength. I think that's served me well.
Yeah, I agree with that. So it goes back to the being adaptable on any situation, depending on and I would say like one of the hardest things is to change your strategy. So especially it's such a humbling experience to change your strategy, especially if like you said, the before it was working, it was killing it, and then all of a sudden it stopped working, but you're like, no, this has to work.
Yeah.
And for you to humble yourself and pivot, like, you know what, I'm not doing this right, it's such a humbling and hard thing to do. But it's one of the best trait you could have is always being a student on that. And once again, it goes back to you becoming a senior key BDR, man. So no, seriously. And with all that, all those strengths you were developing, how did you develop the strengths itself?
Yeah, so I think, you know, another uh, thing that's like important in this role is just like you said, developing your strengths, and finding out how you develop your strengths. Everybody's a different learner, right? So, for instance, I'm a visual learner, so I need to visually see something like a video of
Hmm.
something, maybe to get something technically down. And I noticed another way that I learned is or a great way that I learned is through trial and error. So that kind of going back to my strength from earlier on, right? So if
Yeah.
I most chances are that if I make a mistake on something, because I made that actual mistake and there was repercussions from it, like I'm gonna learn from it, you know.
Yeah.
So some ways that I develop, my strengths were, through, um, through kind of telling myself, for instance, that, every no is a close, it gets me closer to a yes, right? So
Yeah.
kind of softening, this kind of goes back to rejection handling, right? So I noticed that something that I would keep telling myself in my head that like, that's kind of a good thing that I got to know, because that must mean that I'm getting closer to a yes, right? Because most likely chances are in this industry, unless you're like really, really like amazing, which kudos to you, but you're not going to get like a back-to-back yes, right? From a back-to-back phone calls. There's going to be no's in between. It's just inevitable.
Right.
So the fact that you got to know could, if you think about it, that's a good thing that that's happening. Like you're going through the necessary no's to get to that yes. So kind of reminding myself about those things, definitely got me a long way. Um, Another way that I developed my strengths was just looking at my numbers, right? So this goes back to consistency, and the numbers don't lie. And the more
Numbers
activity
don't
I
lie.
did, yeah, the
Hmm.
more sales activity that I did, it just I through Salesforce, you could look at your activity and pull reports and stuff like that. And the reports would say the more activity that I did, the more meetings and the more successful I was. Like,
Yeah.
if maybe a month or so was really slow for me, I look back at my sales activity and maybe my sales activity was not as high as other months that month, so it completely correlates. Your sales activity just 100% correlates, with your success, in my opinion. So just keeping that in mind was another way that I developed, like the strength of consistency, right?
Hmm.
Another good example too would be listening to my previous calls and learning from them, right? Could I have handled the objection better? Did I listen well enough to the guest? Did I ask the right questions? Could I have worded my value propositions better? Did my prospect fully understand, the value, that I was trying to convey? Because a lot of the times, maybe the way you worded it just could have came out wrong. um, you know, I definitely also collaborated with my fellow BDRs, and we would talk strategy and we would talk about,
Hmm.
what's working for them, what's working for me, what's not working for them, what's something that they tried that they maybe just blew up in their face, or what's something new that they tried maybe, that's getting them a lot more traction.
Right.
So just little things like that definitely add up.
Yeah. So no, it's and the one of the hardest things to do too is to listen to your own calls. I remember when I started listening to my own calls. Oh my gosh, you think you're smooth until you hear yourself. And it's like, oh my gosh, what was I thinking? Why did I ask that question? Why did I direct this conversation to this way? And
Yeah.
and it is it's the best way to learn though, is
Yeah.
learning, and then that's where you know not to ask those questions again, because
Right.
there are times where you're in a natural conversation, and it goes back to selling the meeting, not the product, right? Where
Mhm.
you start carrying the conversation there. But 100% agree with
Right.
there. Just listening to your call really makes,
Yeah.
that's what got me. I do have to listen more on calls as well, especially from you guys. You guys are killing it, right? But
You're on
I
your way,
listen
dude.
to, yeah, I appreciate it. I'm trying to be Key BDR too, like you, my bro.
You're not far off, bro, I promise.
I appreciate it. Well, speaking of not far off, so what's some activities that you think could lead to becoming a key BDR? And by the way, what's a key BDR? Explain it to people what a key BDR is compared to like a standard BDR.
Yeah, sure. So, key by key, it means that you're targeting key accounts, and by that I mean usually larger accounts for your company, right? So, different companies um, qualified or kind of qualify different accounts by their sizes.
Right,
So you'll have smaller companies that you could be going after. You have medium-sized companies that you could be going after, and you have your largest set of companies that you could be going after, right? The ones that if you were to generate an opportunity for, or ones that if you were to, help close, um, business with them, then them coming to your company would generate them a lot of just more revenue for your company.
right.
So that's what we say in our company. At least I know every company is a little bit different. But key account BDR means that I target the biggest set of accounts that I possibly could for the company.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
So what's something I could do, because I want to be a key BDR too, right? So what's something and some activities that I could do to become one?
Yeah, I think the first thing that comes to mind is just consistency. I think consistency is something that's really valued here at our company. The amount of sales activities you do, even if you aren't, maybe seeing the results you want to, but are you putting in the work for it? Essentially, I think goes a long way. And I
Right,
and I know every company is set up differently, but what I've noticed in our company, they definitely look at that as well too. So from the very beginning, are you putting in the effort? Even if you're not seeing the results, do you have that like grinder mindset? Do you have that like mindset of like, even though I'm down, like I'm still shooting my shot, you know? So consistent, kind of keeping up with your consistency is huge. Um, Booking, I think quality opportunities, I think is also very important. So you could book a meeting with a prospect, and but is that meeting gonna be fruitful, for the AE
right.
or for the
Yeah,
company down the line? Is there really actual good pain where they could have, a long conversation and actually really consider us for their business? That's another thing, right? Because we could, it'd be very easy to book meetings for our company with companies that maybe aren't the best fit, but at the
right.
end of the day,
Quality
that would
over
be
quantity,
wasting,
right.
right? Yeah. So that would be, I think, that would be like another thing that I would definitely say helps a lot with kind of taking that next step. Um, I would say helping, conceptualize new techniques and messaging, and helping out your fellow BDRs as well too. Kind of taking as much of a leadership role as possible. I think is very valued here as well too. At the company, just to anything that leads to more pipeline and team building definitely is, you can't go wrong with it.
So, well, hey, so let's say there's someone that's about to just start off, and they want to be a BDR in general, right? So what's some advice you could give people, even people that don't have a background in sales? For example, you did sales, but technically you weren't in a sales position, right? You were in a
Mhm.
service based position. So what's some advice you could give people to becoming a BDR?
Yeah, I would say it would tie back to like what I struggled with the most when I first started, right? So um um and what's helped me out the most is definitely consistency. So you're just starting out, just know that consistency really matters. um for instance, as Rich said, on average, it takes, 8 touch points for a prospect maybe to even reply to you, right? So those 8 touch points, maybe you did a month ago, and now you're just seeing the fruits of your labor through a reply. So
Hmm.
because you kept up your consistency a month ago, now you're going to see the fruits of your labor this month. So while you're in this month and seeing the fruits of your labor, you still also have to plant the seed that month so that next month you could continue seeing replies, you can
Exactly.
continue seeing conversations, so you could continue seeing activity that would lead to more pipeline, right? So that's
Hmm.
why consistency is huge, because whatever you do now, you won't see, most likely you won't see the result of it maybe like a month or a couple months out. So you just gotta keep at it.
Exactly.
So that also goes back to like not getting discouraged, right? So maybe it's a slower month, and just think about it as like you're planting the seed this month, you're doing the work this month, right? So that next month you could be getting, a lot of replies and a lot of conversations with your prospects. Um, so kind of keeping that mentality. I think another good advice that I would give is listen more than you speak. Listening is huge, huge, huge. As like we were talking about earlier, as I would listen to my previous calls, one of the things that I would definitely catch myself doing is maybe missing some one little piece of information that I could have built off of, right? Maybe they said something that had to do with how we help them, and I missed it,
Hmm.
and I didn't ask him to elaborate on it, because
Hmm.
plain and simple, I wasn't listening well enough. I was maybe thinking about like something else. So listening, that's why listening is super key, so you could kind of get the bits and pieces from their conversation and kind of build branches from it, so that you could kind of keep the conversation going and
Yeah.
keep showing value as well too. um, what's another one? I would say another definitely big piece of advice is being vocal about your intentions of moving up. um, you
Yes.
know Definitely being vocal about your intentions of getting a promotion, of maybe you see yourself for the long haul at the company. Even if you aren't sure you're ready for that position, or even if you're not sure that you will be ready, i think I think you should still be vocal about it, even if you're not sure. Like, you're not, maybe you're 80% sure, 75% sure that maybe you do want to continue in sales, or, because sales is also notorious where, like, you'll probably, doubting yourself you'll probably doubt yourself, like,
Hundred
on
percent.
slower
So
times,
many.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You won't have conversations, you're not
100%
getting,
true.
meetings,
Yes.
like, it just, those thoughts creep up, and you're just like, is this for me, um so maybe those would, maybe that would translate into you maybe not being sure if you want to continue in sales for that next promotion. But I
Yes.
still think being vocal about wanting that next position is still very important, um, because I think, just planted in your manager's mindset that like you want it, it goes a long way, because you never know when the opportunity can come, and you want your manager um, to always have you in mind, right, for that next promotion. You want your manager to know that you are interested. Um, Worst case scenario, I think, that an opportunity comes by, and in you apply for it, um, even if you're not sure that you're ready for it, then you're kind of forcing yourself to be sure, to be ready. You're kind of forcing yourself to make that crucial decision in your career, so it gives you a little push.
No, I agree with that. So at least like once you actually show your intentions or voice your intentions of what you want to become, once you become a mid senior or senior level role, at least they could start giving you the roadmap or even start giving you activities
Exactly.
or more responsibilities to get choose
Mhm.
where you want to do. Yeah, I 100%.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah, so
100%.
what's you're already in the top of the top. What's next for you, man? After this?
Yeah, so I'm looking for that AE position, I think I've come a long way, and it's been definitely a roller coaster ride, and it's just is it's what I expected. And if I made it this far, then I'm ready for what's next. I think one thing that I'm like working on, of course, is kind of not being scared to fail, right? So I think you know that next step as an AE is definitely just another chapter, right? Of taking that leap, and not being scared to fail, and putting yourself out there, and it's another chapter of me being comfortable with being uncomfortable, right? So yeah, I can't wait for the next chapter.
Yeah, so 100% on that. So you dropped by the way, thank you so much for joining the show. You dropped so many gems. Um, I know people is going to want to reach out to you. How do we reach you anyways?
Just shoot me a message on LinkedIn. Happy to connect, happy to network. If you guys are by any chance in Ottawa, Canada, next week between the 14th and 17th at the SAS North Convention in Ottawa, Canada, I'll be there. Look out for the guy
Yes.
in the orange blazer. Hard to miss. And yeah, hopefully we could connect.
Yes, connect with them, everyone. But hey, thank you so much for being guests. You dropped a bunch of gems. Connect with this guy. Who knows? He might be able to open more doors to let people, and he might coach people. We'll see where he goes with that, right?
Yeah.
Yes,
Happy to continue the conversation, especially if you're coming from the restaurant industry or hospitality industry. Um, uh, you know, happy to elaborate on my role, and see if it's a good fit for you. And if it is, then happy to help in any way I can, because I've been there too. It's when you're ready to make that change from any industry, it could be daunting. Like it could be, you just like, what step do I take? Like, am I ready for this? And I was there. I 100% was in that stage. Rich, I'm sure, was there too, countless
yes.
of time. It's crazy. It's sometimes, scary to take that leap. So happy to help any way I can.
Yeah, so Arturo is living proof that you can transition from completely different industry into this tech sales role. But feel free to reach out to him. Thank you so much. By the way, if you guys want to know which boot camp I took, is Course Careers description down below. At least it gives you knowledge on how to do the job role and what needs to be done. Or even sometimes it showcases the types of tools we use. So at least you could get to where we're at this moment, or even where Arturo is at this moment, right? But thank you so much. See you on the next show. Take care, guys.
Later, guys.